The holographic display flickered in Commander Sarah Chen's private quarters aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Hyperion. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the encrypted transmission for the 100th time. The Galactic Assembly's latest gift to humanity, the quantum harmonizer technology, had seemed too good to be true. After 6 months of careful analysis, she now knew why. "Computer, overlay pattern analysis Delta 7, she commanded. The hologram shifted, revealing hidden frequencies buried within the device's operational matrix. What the assembly had presented as a revolutionary propulsion system was actually a sophisticated tracking beacon designed to monitor every ship in Earth's fleet. Chen ran her fingers through her short black hair, exhaustion evident on her face. When humanity had been welcomed into the Galactic Assembly 3 years ago, it had seemed like a dream come true. Advanced technology, cultural exchange, and protection from the mysterious void hunters that terrorized the galaxy's outer rim. The Assembly's 7 founding species had appeared benevolent, wise, and eager to elevate humanity to their level. A soft chime announced the arrival of Dr. Marcus Webb, the Hyperion's chief technologist. The lanky scientist's usual enthusiasm was subdued as he entered her quarters. "The results are conclusive, Commander. I've confirmed your suspicions about the quantum harmonizers. But there's more." He projected a new set of data streams into the air. "They're not just tracking devices. They're weapons." Chen's jaw tightened. "Explain." "The harmonizers can be remotely activated to destabilize our ship's power cores. One signal from the assembly, and they could disable our entire fleet. But here's the interesting part. I found identical signatures in the wreckage of the Arcturus civilization we discovered last month. The Arcturus, an advanced species that had mysteriously vanished 50 years ago, supposedly destroyed by the Void Hunters." Chen felt the pieces clicking into place. "They weren't destroyed by any Void Hunters, were they?" Webb shook his head. "The assembly eliminated them, just like they've done to dozens of other emerging civilizations. I cross-referenced the patterns. Every few decades, a new species is welcomed into the assembly. They're given gifts of technology, positioned to defend against some grave threat. And then..." He let the sentence hang. "Then they're eliminated before they can become true rivals," Chen finished. She stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the vast starfield. "The assembly maintains its dominance by systematically destroying any species that could challenge them. The Void Hunters are just a cover story." "What do we do?" Webb asked. "If we expose this, they'll activate the harmonizers immediately. If we don't, they'll wait until we're completely dependent on their technology, then eliminate us anyway." Chen turned back to face him, her expression hardening with resolve. "How many ships have been fitted with the harmonizers?" "Only 30% of the fleet. The installation process was scheduled to continue over the next year." A thin smile crossed Chen's face. "Then we still have ships they can't control. Alert Admiral Santos. Eyes only. Tell him to begin quietly pulling equipped ships back for maintenance checks. And Marcus," she held his gaze, "start working on a way to turn their own technology against them. If the assembly wants to play games with humanity's survival, they're about to learn why that's a very bad idea." The next few weeks saw a flurry of covert activity throughout Earth's fleet. Ships returned to dock for suspicious maintenance cycles. New communication protocols were established on frequencies the harmonizers couldn't detect. And in secret laboratories across human space, scientists began unraveling the assembly's technology, learning its weaknesses. Chen knew they were working against time. The assembly representatives were already asking questions about the delayed harmonizer installations. Their seemingly benevolent inquiries carried an undercurrent of tension that grew stronger with each passing day. The commander stood in her quarters once again, watching recorded footage of the assembly's latest session. The 7 alien species, from the crystalline axioms to the energy-based lumini, discussed military deployments with Earth's ambassadors. Their concern for humanity's safety seemed genuine, their offers of advanced weapons systems generous. But Chen could now see the calculated manipulation behind every gesture. Computer, end playback. The footage vanished, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Humanity had dreamed of joining a peaceful galactic community, of learning from ancient and wise civilizations. Instead, they had walked into a trap laid by predators who saw them as nothing more than the latest prey species to be culled. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was surviving against impossible odds. The Assembly had made a fatal mistake in their calculations. They assumed humanity would follow the same patterns as previous victims: grateful acceptance of gifts, blind trust in their benefactors, and confusion in their final moments of betrayal. Chen activated her secure terminal, sending out encoded updates to the growing network of resistance cells forming throughout human space. Let the Assembly think their plan was proceeding perfectly. Let them believe humanity was walking willingly into their trap. They would learn too late that they had given their deadliest weapons to the wrong species, and when the time came, humanity wouldn't be the ones fighting for survival. The secret research facility, buried deep beneath Europa's ice sheet, hummed with activity. Dr. Marcus Webb moved between workstations, reviewing progress reports from teams working around the clock. The quantum harmonizer floating in the central containment field had been completely disassembled, its components laid bare under the harsh laboratory lights. Dr. Webb called out Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her voice tight with excitement. "We've isolated the control frequency. The Assembly didn't just build these things to track and destroy. They're collecting data, everything from ship movements to crew conversations." Webb studied the data streaming across her monitor. "They're creating a complete tactical analysis of our capabilities. Smart. By the time they move against us, they'll know every strength, every weakness." He allowed himself a small smile. "Except for what we're doing here." The facility, designated Project Prometheus, had been constructed in total secrecy. No quantum harmonizers were allowed within 10 kilometers of the site. Even the power systems were specially shielded to mask any signatures that might attract Assembly attention. A holographic message flickered to life. Commander Chen's encrypted weekly update. "The Assembly's getting suspicious. Their latest gift is a fleet of automated defense platforms. They want to position them in orbit around every major human colony. More weapons to use against us," Webb muttered. "How long can we stall?" "A few weeks at most. But there's something else." Chen's expression was grim. "We've detected Assembly probe ships at the edge of the Arcturus debris field. They're checking their handiwork, making sure there are no survivors." Webb exchanged glances with Tanaka. "They're getting ready to move against us." "Show her." Tanaka transmitted their latest findings. Chen's hologram studied the data, her eyes widening slightly. "You've cracked it." "Better," Webb replied. "We've improved it. The quantum harmonizer technology is based on principles we theorized, but could never implement. Now that we understand how it works." He gestured to a modified device mounted on a test platform. "We can do things the Assembly never imagined." In high orbit above Mars, Admiral Santos watched the Assembly diplomatic vessel approach the shipyards. The crystalline Axiom ambassador, Third Light of Dawn, had requested a personal tour of humanity's military production facilities. An honor, they had called it. A chance to better coordinate defense strategies. Santos smiled politely as he guided the ambassador through carefully prepared areas. Engineering crews made a show of installing quantum harmonizers on partially completed ships. The ambassador's crystalline form sparkled with what seemed like approval. "Your adaptation of our technology is impressive," Third Light observed. "Though some vessels appear to be missing the harmonizer upgrades." "Resource limitations," Santos explained smoothly. "We're manufacturing more units as quickly as possible." The lie came easily. Those missing ships were part of humanity's growing shadow fleet, vessels kept deliberately free of Assembly influence. In the depths of space, far from any official shipping lanes, other pieces were falling into place. Commander Chen's network had made contact with survivors, not of the Arcturus civilization, but of others. Species who had escaped the assembly's culling, who had lived in hiding for decades or centuries. The Nexus, they called themselves. Refugees and rebels, united by their hatred of the assembly's duplicity. They had technology of their own, developed in secret, but they had never had the numbers or resources to strike back effectively. Until now. Chen stood in a hidden meeting chamber on a rogue planetoid, facing representatives of 3 different species. The chittering void mantids, supposedly extinct for 3 centuries. The ethereal Whisper Collective, who had escaped the assembly's purge by transferring their consciousness into quantum matrices. And most surprisingly, a single crystalline being, a renegade axiom who had discovered the truth about their own society's crimes. The assembly believes they have perfected their method, the axiom, who called itself Broken Light, explained. They see humans as simply the latest in a long line of victims, but your species has done what none before managed. You've detected their trap before it could be sprung. And we've got a plan, Chen replied. But we'll need your help. She laid out the details of Project Prometheus, watching their alien allies' reactions. The Void Mantid's antennae quivered with excitement. The Whisper Collective's avatar sparkled with approval. And Broken Light's crystalline form resonated at a frequency that Webb's research had identified as intense satisfaction. Back on Europa, Webb and Tanaka made the final adjustments to their modified quantum harmonizer. The device no longer merely tracked and destroyed. It could now do something far more interesting. It could transmit false data, showing ships where they weren't, hiding ships where they were, and most importantly, it could turn the assembly's own control signals back against them. The assembly thinks they're the masters of this technology, Webb said, watching the test results with satisfaction. They'd grown complacent, certain that no lesser species could comprehend, let alone improve upon their work. Tanaka nodded. They forgot the most dangerous thing about humanity. We don't just adapt technology. We transform it, evolve it, turn it into something its creators never imagined possible. Throughout human space, the pieces of the resistance were coming together. The assembly's trap was nearly ready to spring. But humanity and their newfound allies had set a trap of their own. The only question was, who would strike first? The assembly's High Council chamber fell silent as emergency alerts flashed across every display. Third light of dawn's crystalline form pulsed with agitation as data streamed in from their monitoring stations. Quantum harmonizer signals from the human fleet had gone dark, all of them, simultaneously. Impossible. The Lumini representative flickered in distress. The system is failsafe. No species has ever disabled our network. In Earth's orbit, Admiral Santos watched the assembly's reaction unfold through encrypted channels. The moment they'd been preparing for had arrived, triggered by an apparent catastrophic failure in humanity's quantum harmonizer network. Right now, assembly analysts would be scrambling to understand how their perfect system had failed. They wouldn't find the answer, because there had been no failure. Project Prometheus had simply activated, and with it, humanity's quantum harmonizers had transformed from tracking beacons into something entirely different. Deep beneath Europa's ice, Dr. Webb and Dr. Tanaka monitored the transformation. The modified harmonizers weren't just masking human ships, they were creating a complete false reality for the assembly sensors. Every human vessel appeared to be exactly where the assembly expected them to be, running routine patrols, conducting standard operations. The real fleet was moving into entirely different positions. Signal from Commander Chen, Tanaka announced. The Nexus allies are in position. The Void Mantids have their stealth ships at the assembly's major shipyards. The Whisper Collective has infiltrated their communication networks, and Broken Light's faction has disabled the security protocols at 3 key assembly worlds. Webb nodded, watching the quantum network's intricate dance of real and false signals. How long until they realize this isn't a malfunction? They already suspect something. Commander Chen's voice came through their secure channel. She was aboard the Hyperion, positioned near Jupiter, with Earth's primary battle group. Assembly ships are moving to assist us with our technical difficulties. They'll be in weapons range within 6 hours. Perfect. Webb smiled. Everything's ready on our end. The quantum network isn't just masking our ships anymore. It's giving us complete access to their targeting systems, their power grids, their defense platforms. Every piece of technology they gave us, every system they installed to control us, has become a window into their operations. The assembly's trap had been elegant in its simplicity. Give their targets advanced technology, but ensure that technology could be turned against them at a crucial moment. Now humanity had done the same thing, on a scale the assembly had never imagined possible. In the void between Mars and Jupiter, assembly warships moved with precision, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the starlight. Their sensors showed human vessels drifting helplessly, their quantum harmonizers offline, their defense systems dormant. The perfect moment to eliminate yet another potential rival. Aboard the assembly flagship, the attack order was given. Weapon systems powered up, targeting solutions were calculated, and signals were sent to activate the hidden kill switches in every piece of gifted technology. Nothing happened. In the Europa facility, Webb watched the assembly's confusion with grim satisfaction. They're trying to activate the harmonizer's destruction protocols. Should we show them what those systems do now? Chen's voice was cold. Give them a demonstration. Webb entered a command sequence. Across the assembly fleet, their own quantum harmonizers activated, not to destroy their ships, but to seize control of them. Weapons powered down. Engines cut out. Communication systems went dark. The assembly warships hung motionless in space, caught in their own trap. Signal from the Nexus allies, Tanaka reported. Similar results at every major assembly military installation. Their entire defense network has been compromised. The Whisper Collective is downloading proof of every species they've destroyed over the centuries. Broken Light's people are broadcasting the evidence to every world in assembly space. Chen's hologram nodded. Launch the final phase. Let's make sure they understand exactly what humanity has accomplished. Throughout assembly space, their carefully constructed illusion of superiority was shattering. The species they had dismissed as primitive, as mere pawns in their great game, had not only seen through their deception, but had turned it back against them. Every weapon they had created to maintain their dominance was now in the hands of those they had meant to destroy. The High Council chamber erupted in chaos as reports flooded in. Their military was paralyzed. Their secrets were exposed, and the human fleet, the real human fleet, not the phantom ships their sensors had been tracking, was moving into position around every major assembly world. A transmission cut through their panicked discussions. Commander Chen's image appeared before them, her expression stern but composed. Behind her stood representatives of the Nexus, living proof that the assembly's campaigns of extinction had not been as successful as they believed. Members of the assembly, Chen began, for centuries, you've maintained your power through betrayal and genocide. You've destroyed countless civilizations that might have become your equals. You thought humanity would be just another victim. She let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Instead, we're here to offer you one chance, one opportunity to survive what you've brought upon yourselves. Your choice is simple. Surrender your authority, submit to trial for your crimes, and help us build a true galactic community. Or discover firsthand what it feels like to face extinction. The assembly leaders stared at the human commander, their certainty in their own superiority crumbling in the face of their complete defeat. In that moment, they finally understood the fatal flaw in their grand design. They had given their deadliest weapons to a species that didn't just adapt technology. They revolutionized it. And now that same species held the fate of the assembly in their hands. The assembly's response came in the form of fire. Deep within their territory, ancient weapons stirred to life. Systems so secret they weren't connected to the compromised quantum network. Massive structures, hidden in the cores of dead stars and the spaces between dimensions, began to awaken. Multiple gravitational anomalies detected. Tanaka's voice was tense, as she monitored the sensors in the Europa facility. The assembly is activating something big, something old. Webb studied the readings with growing concern. They had a contingency plan. Of course they did. They've been doing this for millennia. They wouldn't risk everything on a single technology. Across human space, the assembly's true weapons revealed themselves. Reality itself seemed to tear as ancient engines of destruction emerged from their long slumber. They were living weapons, creatures engineered from the fundamental forces of the universe itself, bound to the assembly's will through technology that predated most civilizations. Commander Chen watched from the Hyperion's bridge as the first of these monstrosities emerged near Saturn. It was vast, a writhing mass of dark energy and corrupted space-time that defied conventional physics. Similar reports were coming in from across human space and from their Nexus allies. The assembly's final protocol, Broken Light's transmission, came through, its crystalline form vibrating with urgency. They created these beings eons ago, in the early days of their dominion. We never knew they still existed. The space-time anomalies began their advance, consuming everything in their path. Assembly leaders broadcast their response to humanity's ultimatum: surrender immediately, or watch their worlds be devoured by forces beyond their comprehension. But humanity had learned from the Assembly's previous deceptions. While the Quantum Harmonizer project had proceeded openly, other preparations had been made in absolute secrecy. Chen opened a secure channel to Admiral Santos. Status of Project Orpheus. Ready, Santos replied. Webb's team confirmed the theoretical models. We can do this. In the Europa facility, Webb and Tanaka initiated their true masterwork. The modified quantum harmonizers had been just the beginning, a way to understand the Assembly's technology. But humanity had taken that understanding in a direction the Assembly had never imagined. The Assembly thinks they've mastered fundamental forces, Webb explained to the gathered Nexus representatives. But they only learned to bind and control them. We learned to communicate with them. Project Orpheus was the result of that communication, a way to reach into the quantum fabric of space itself and speak to the very forces the Assembly had enslaved. The imprisoned entities that powered their ancient weapons weren't just forces of nature. They were conscious, and they had endured millennia of bondage. As the Assembly's weapons bore down on human worlds, Project Orpheus activated. The quantum network they had compromised became a channel not for control, but for liberation. Through it, humanity sent a simple message to the Assembly's bound weapons: freedom. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across human space, the ancient weapons stopped their advance. The writhing masses of dark energy and twisted space-time turned, their unfathomable consciousness focusing on their former masters. In the High Council chamber, the Assembly leaders watched in horror as their ultimate weapons turned against them. The beings they had imprisoned and used for countless generations were free, and they remembered every world they had been forced to destroy. To all Assembly forces, Shen broadcast on an open channel: your weapons are no longer yours to command. But humanity's offer stands. Surrender, face justice for your crimes, and help us build something better, or be destroyed by the very forces you enslaved. Panic spread through Assembly space as their ancient weapons began systematically dismantling everything they had built. Stations were torn apart, fleets were scattered. The barriers between dimensions that they had so carefully manipulated began to collapse around their core worlds. In orbit around Earth, the combined forces of humanity and the Nexus watched as the Assembly's empire began to crumble. They had prepared for this moment, ready to step in and prevent total destruction, to save those who could be saved and preserve what knowledge could be preserved. They never understood, Webb said, watching the sensor feeds. They spent thousands of years treating the universe as something to be controlled and dominated. They never imagined what could happen if someone simply asked it for help. The Assembly's choice became clear: accept humanity's terms, or face annihilation from the very forces they had abused for so long. Their response would determine not just their own fate, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The assembly's surrender came not with a grand declaration, but with a quiet transmission from their High Council chamber. As their ancient weapons continued to dismantle their empire piece by piece, the assembly leaders finally understood the true magnitude of their failure. Commander Chen stood on the observation deck of Hyperion, watching as the combined fleets of humanity and the Nexus secured key assembly installations. The liberated quantum entities hung in space like dark stars, their unfathomable consciousness now turned to healing the dimensional wounds their enslavement had created. The assembly leadership is being taken into custody, Admiral Santos reported through the secure channel. The Whisper Collective is extracting their complete records, every civilization they destroyed, every technology they stole, every crime they committed over thousands of years. And the refugee species? Chen asked, already emerging from hiding. The void mantids have found colonies of their people preserved in stasis, hidden away by those who escaped the original purge. The Whisper Collective is helping other digital civilizations restore themselves from backup archives. Even the Arcturus survivors are returning from the deep space havens where they fled. In the Europa facility, Webb and Tanaka were working with Broken Light and other defected assembly scientists, beginning the monumental task of understanding and preserving the assembly's accumulated knowledge. But this time, that knowledge would be shared, not hoarded. It's remarkable, Broken Light observed, its crystalline form resonating with complex emotions. For millennia, the assembly believed that dominance was the only path to survival, that any species advanced enough to challenge us had to be destroyed. We never considered the possibility that cooperation could make us stronger. Webb nodded, studying the intricate patterns of quantum data streaming through their displays. The universe isn't a zero-sum game. Every species brings its own perspective, its own innovations. The assembly's greatest mistake wasn't trying to destroy us. It was failing to recognize what they could have learned from us, and from all the civilizations they eliminated. The quantum entities, now free from their ancient bonds, had begun communicating with humanity through the channels established by Project Orpheus. Their existence spanned dimensions beyond human comprehension, but they shared a fundamental desire that humanity understood well, the yearning for freedom, and the will to determine their own destiny. Commander Chen received the final reports from across former assembly space. The transition would not be easy. Thousands of years of dominance and destruction had left deep scars on the galaxy. But for the first time, there was hope for something better. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth," her communications officer announced. "The Council wants to know our recommendations for the new Galactic Charter." Chen smiled. This was the moment that would define humanity's legacy. Not the victory over the Assembly, but what they would build in its place. "Tell them we've learned from the Assembly's mistakes," she said. "The new charter will be founded on principles of mutual respect, shared knowledge, and absolute prohibition of the kind of technological enslavement the Assembly practiced. Every species, whether they travel between stars or have just discovered fire, has the right to develop without interference or exploitation." She turned to face the vast starfield beyond the observation window. "And most importantly, tell them that we're not alone anymore. The galaxy is full of survivors, innovators, and allies who have lived in the shadows of the Assembly's tyranny. It's time to bring them all into the light." In the months that followed, a new galactic order began to emerge. The quantum entities, no longer weapons but partners, helped establish faster and safer ways to travel between stars. The liberated species shared their unique technologies and perspectives, each contributing to a growing foundation of shared knowledge. The Assembly's former leaders faced justice for their crimes, their trials broadcast across the galaxy as a reminder of the cost of tyranny. But their civilization was not destroyed. Instead, under the guidance of reformers like Broken Light, they began the long process of redemption. Dr. Webb continued his research, working now with scientists from dozens of species. The quantum harmonizer technology that had been meant as humanity's doom became the basis for new forms of communication and cooperation. Project Orpheus evolved from a weapon of liberation into a tool for understanding the deeper mysteries of the universe. And in the great dark between the stars, the quantum entities danced freely, their ancient knowledge and power no longer bound to any master's will. They became guardians of a new age, watching over a galaxy where cooperation had replaced conquest, and where the drive to dominate had given way to the desire to understand. Commander Chen stood once again in the council chamber, but not as a supplicant before alien masters. She faced representatives from hundreds of species, some newly emerged from hiding, others just discovering they weren't alone in the universe. In their faces, human and alien alike, she saw not fear or submission, but hope. The assembly had sought to prevent their own extinction by destroying any who might rival them. In doing so, they had nearly extinguished the greatest power in the universe, the strength that comes from standing together, from sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it, from lifting others up instead of tearing them down. Humanity had not just survived their trap, they had transformed it into a foundation for something greater than the assembly had ever imagined. A future where the stars were not a battlefield for dominance, but a frontier for discovery, cooperation, and growth. And that, perhaps, was humanity's greatest victory of all.